Hello, long time no see. I thought it was about time that we tried another Essentia Foundation slash Bernardo Kastrup video, and I just can't help it, right? I've been off Bernardo for a while now, and because I think it's in general terms, I have said what I think I need to say about him, and only if he, steps in a turd or something like that, I'll bring it up, right? There were a few in this new video which I heard sort of with a half an ear, right? There were a few nuggets I wanted to comment on. Now, the problem is, I don't remember exactly where these nuggets are, but they're sort of here and there in this video. And I thought I might just take it from one end to the other and comment as we go along, right? It's the problem I have with Bernardo Kastrup is he feels like as I've said a lot of times, a sophist. He the way his communication is structured, and the way he keeps arguing the same way over and over and over again. He has come up with one analogy or one metaphor, and then he keeps using that metaphor over and over again, and people keep asking him about it, and then he repeats that metaphor over and over and over again. It seems it's sort of a kind of a, what do you call that, a one-trick pony kind of dude, right? And to be quite honest, I don't understand why people are so baffled and all up in, wow, Bernardo Kastrup, you have saved my life. And I don't quite understand this euphoria by some people, at least in the comment sections below his videos. To me, he comes across as somebody who's not quite. He might be honest, right? But from a flawed foundation, which has repeatedly criticized in a lot of my prior videos. I mean, I'm going towards, I think, about almost 100 videos, more or less dealing with the philosophy of, that's what he calls it, right, of Bernardo Kastrup. So there's a lot of dig in my backlog, right, or my back history, if you want to dive in my criticism. And then there's sort of my own videos on my own philosophy, my ontology, which I have made a series called ABC Rule. I think it's not the best term to use. I have sort of regretted I used the term rule, because I don't like the idea of rules. When you present something and say this is a rule, it's like, oh my god, I have to follow the rule, or somebody's trying to enforce a rule on me or anything like. It's not like that, right? It's basically a pattern, maybe you could say, right? But nevertheless, never mind about that. In recent times, it's like he started a new company producing chips again, AI chips. I don't get it, right? I mean, if that's what he wants to do, I mean, more power to him, right? But what about this philosophy thing? Is it just done and dusted? Is it, I have written the books, you'd have to take the course, it's settled, we just have to convince people, they just have to, pay attention, right? It's like, it bounces, a criticism bounces off him, it seems, right? And I mean, I have made a very, very, very long list, or at least a decently long list of things that I consider huge problems in his philosophy. One of them being, he doesn't argue for that external world he keeps talking about, right? Just to take one of them. So, and when he sits there with his little minion, Hans Bustra, right? who's just a paid idiot who has to pretend that this is some kind of discussion or, a debate or some kind of... He's just given some money to pretend that this is serious. Is it just me, or does this come across as completely fake? To me, it's completely fake, right? I'm not saying that he should necessarily, just because I made some criticism videos and criticized his philosophy in numerous videos, that he could take that as a stepping stone to say, I might be needing to clarify this a bit more. But the way he sort of, when he sits there, I have, as I said, with half an ear and half an eye, I've watched this video a couple of times while I was doing something else, right? And sort of listened, oh, what the hell was that, right? I do that at times, right? I'm not diving too much into Bernardo, though if there is a serious video dealing with the hardcore, fundamental philosophy, I tend to listen to it because it's, I like that. I'm deeply interested in it, right? When he sits there, he looks so fake. Is it just my senses that are sort of in overdrive? He feels so fake to me, right? Okay, enough of that. Let's dump in before it takes too long. And I hope, it's been a while since I used my streaming software last time. So and I'm sitting on my Microsoft PC, and I've done it a few times earlier, and because there's a problem with my Mac I haven't fixed yet. So regarding recording these streams, and so I have to sit here in my the PC in my office here, right? So let's dig in, and it is a 1 hour and 20 minutes, so this might be a multi-parter series, right? I'll try to, if there's nothing interesting, I might jump to the next chapter, right? So otherwise I'd have to, go through it in order to figure out if there's something I need to challenge or comment on and so on, right? Okay, let's get going.
There is a paradigm shift happening in biology and neuroscience away from the idea that life and consciousness are somehow encoded in DNA.
Our understanding of DNA is that of a protein factory. What we like to think, or have liked to think so far, is that if you have a brick factory, you explain Cologne's cathedral. Well, no, you have the bricks, but something has to know how to put those bricks together in the right way, so you get Cologne's cathedral.
That's a little hint to the Christians, right? Cologne's cathedral. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Oh, he's a Christian and he loves, cathedral art. Yes. These cathedrals, which was, they were as useless as the pyramids, right? That basically took down the economy of the Egyptians. At least that dynasty. Were built on the backs of the poor people who had been brainwashed and mentally destroyed into building shit, right? And so the priests could go and have a nice life, and the poor people could pay and be paid back when they were dead, right? Yeah, let's reference the cathedrals, right? That's for the Christians. So that's what I point out. This is kind of sophist, right? What can we use as an example? Let's take the cathedrals, because the Christians,
Living organisms have a coherent, associated, holistic organizing plan.
I sat down with Bernardo Kastrup to make sense of the groundbreaking work of Michael Levin and Christoph Koch, who are revolutionizing the fields of biology and neuroscience.
So we have now tools where you can literally see, for example, the electric face. There's pre-pattern that tells you where should the eye go, how many should there be, where should the mouth be.
What's going on here is more than just DNA. It comes from an archetypal level.
Classically...
Oh, archetype. Okay, so now we're bringing Jung in, right? It's, it's all this. That's why I call it sophistry. It's using words. So you've been groomed, you've been prepared. Archetype, Jung, right? Right, whatever, right? But it's this when words are being used as philosophy, it's a surefire sign that we're dealing with a sophist, not a philosopher. You could call it. It's like if there's a dog turd in my soup, right? It's only in one corner, so I can eat the part over here, and he has some decent philosophy in some regards, and other parts of it stinks like shit, right? So it's like I don't want any of it. If I find one dog turd in your philosophy and you have not clarified why there's a dog turd there, I'm not buying it. I don't want my philosophy contaminated with dog turd philosophy, right? And all this word salad bullshit, right? It rubs me completely the wrong way. Just make a video where you present your philosophy and say, this is my philosophy. Shoot it down, right? No, we have to sit there in his fancy living room, right? And oh my God, I'm so rich, right? I have a new company. I make a lot of extra money, and also CEO of this and Hadron Colliders there, and all these fancy professors in my Essentia Foundation. Oh my God, I'm brilliant, right?
Science assumes that out of matter, life and consciousness emerge.
That's the one eye, right? You always, in these kinds of woo-woo videos, and that goes for any woo-woo video, you always see the one eye, right? It's always one eye. Why exactly only one eye? Why not two eyes, right? Because there's only one philosophy. My philosophy. That's it, right? It's cultish. If there's only one person here who sets the rules for how things work, it's a cult. One eye means there's only one way to see things. There are nobody allowed to have any criticism. You are a peasant. You have to, take notice. Pay attention, as they say, right? You're just a stupid monkey on a rock. While these fancy professors are slapping the heads off of some slime somewhere and figure out maybe DNA doesn't work as whatever, right? And we have found out is that there's a dissociation over here and another dissociation here. And when we put some electrodes on this, beaver, we can figure out that it might have a brain, right? How about just presenting your philosophy so I can figure out whether or not it doesn't suck, right? Just make it as clear as you can. All this semi-bullshit sophistry, I'm not eating it.
Now, the work of Michael Levin and Christoph Koch takes a more holistic view, in which life and consciousness...
It's a more holistic, or whole, everybody's being heard, right? Yeah, holistic. I'm more holistic. It's like I'm better. I'm more reasonable. Everybody's taken into account. I'm looking at everybody, not just my little corner of the universe. I'm holistic, right?
Are not a simple emergent phenomenon, not a computation of genes and molecules.
Consciousness, according to IIT, ultimately is the only thing that it's absolute existence. It's not
only thing that has a only single
not a computation. It does not arise from mere computation being performed.
It does not arise from a mere that
Bernardo Kastrup thinks that Christoph Koch's integrated information theory might be our first accurate scientific theory of consciousness.
As far as we can get, I think IIT...
Why do you need a theory of consciousness? I mean, why? You have your first person experience of what you call consciousness. I mean, I don't know what the fuck consciousness is, right? It's an artificial label somebody have stuck on. You have an awareness of the elephants, you have an experience of blue, and the sound of somebody taking a morning dump, right? And that I call consciousness. So now I have to make a theory of consciousness. Why do I need to make a theory of it? Because if you're making a theory about consciousness, you're using that consciousness to make that theory about that which you use to create that theory of consciousness. It's a circular argument, right? A theory of consciousness. You're using consciousness to create theories. Otherwise, I don't know what the fuck you mean by consciousness, right? But if you use it as a sort of a diagrammic thing with all the phenomena and the meta-conscious awareness and so on, all put in a bag called consciousness or mind, right? If you're using that mind to come up with a theory about that mind or that consciousness, you're using that consciousness in order to theorize about consciousness. I mean, color me crazy, but it does sound a bit circular, doesn't it? So what are you using to theorize? Are you looking at some computer screens, some diagrams, and asking some people over here and looking at something over there? Well, that's an experience, right? You're interpreting in a certain way as some kind of consciousness, but you just use that consciousness in order to create that idea. So that idea cannot go backwards and become consciousness, right? You say it's a theory about consciousness. Okay, but theories about something you don't have access to, right? I mean, gravity, you don't have access to gravity. You can see shit falling, as we call it, and moving this way and that way, and create some kind of, story, a scientific story about how these things will move about under this or that circumstance. But that doesn't mean you experience gravity. That's why you call it theory of gravity, because you don't experience what the hell is going on. You can just watch the spectacle of the consequences, so to say, right? But they seem to do it in the same kind of fashion, therefore you create a theory. It usually behaves this way. It might behave this way in the future. That's a theory. That which you are actually experiencing, why do you need a theory about it? It's the actual experience. And if it's not the actual experience, what is it you're trying to create a theory about? You're using something you have access to create an experience of something, a theory about something you don't have access to, but is responsible for that which you're using to create that theory. It's circular, man, right? Come on.
He is by far the best game in town.
Welcome to the Essentia Foundation's YouTube channel, and thank you so much for watching. This video is a deep dive into two theories that might be a bit challenging to understand. Now, what's good to know is that I have previously held two full-length conversations with both Michael Levin and Christoph Koch that you can watch here. What's new in this video is that with the director of the Essentia Foundation, philosopher Bernardo Kastrup, I talk about the philosophical implication of Michael Levin's.
Is it because he has the government papers? Some dusty old dude from some forgotten university ivory tower has given him some government papers that say, now you have become philosopher. And you can bear that title, and whenever your minions, refer to you, they can say philosopher, right? It's like, he's a philosopher. So we don't need to have the arguments yet. Just understand there's these fancy people over here who has explained something, and there's a fancy person over there. And this guy is a philosopher, right? So you better listen carefully, right? Pay attention!
Bioelectric fields and Christoph Koch's integrated information theory. And as you will find out, both theories are highly compatible with analytic idealism, the notion that our universe...
Yeah, because any old shit is compatible. Because it's compatible, because he always says, well, everything is mind. No matter what you can mention. He says, well, it's all a ripple. Right? It's all mind. It's all ripples. Right? There's a baseline called subjectivity, and when it ripples for reasons we can't get to, that's what you experience. This is just one of these fancy ripples. Why does it look like an elephant? Nobody knows. Don't ask questions, right? It just does what it does because it is what it is. They're elephants because they're elephants. That's the argument, right?
Is fundamentally conscious. Now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Bernardo Kastrup.
Conversation?
You
Or are you being paid to pretend that this is a conversation? What if you ask the wrong questions about, could you give me a reasonably coherent argument about an external world? And what about this reduction base that you're cherry picking? Does that work? What principle are you working from to cherry pick whatever you want to be the base of everything? Or everything is a base? And why do you call it reduction? Because if you reduce and you get to everything, it's like you're not actually doing a reduction then, right? I mean, should I bring up the list? I have it somewhere, right? Ask him this question, Bustra. If it's a conversation, or if it isn't a conversation, if you're just paid to pretend that this is a conversation, well, that's why I have this strong notion that this is kind of bullshit, right?
of course, connected me to Michael Levin. Do you still remember when you came across his work and how it sort of impacted
it's been a
you?
while ago. That was over 10 years ago. I think they published Michael.
I understand that he is sort of half Danish, half Brazilian, or something like that, right? But I do think there cannot be much Danish Viking left in this dude, right? He looks more Latin than Danish, I would say. Me being completely Danish Viking, I go straight back to the Vikings of the Middle Ages, right? No, not one drop of foreign blood in my, backstory or my, what's it called? Genealogy? So I'm the closest to a Viking you can get, right? This guy looks like some Latin weirdo, right? Okay, enough of that.
Michael and his team published a paper in 2013 about memory in planaria, these little flat aquatic worms that have a head with a nervous system entirely in their heads. All their neurons are in their heads. But they have this peculiar property that if you slice a planaria, even if you decapitate a planaria, the head grows a new body, but the body that is sliced off grows a new head. And what they did was they put a bunch of planaria in an aquarium with a substrate, complex structure in the substrate that the planaria needed to navigate to find food. And they trained the planaria to navigate that labyrinth, so to say, that maze, to find food. And the planaria learned it, so they could find food very quickly. And then they proceeded to decapitate the planaria, so remove their neurons, the entire nervous system, waited 2 weeks until the planaria grew a new head with a new nervous system, clean from scratch. They put the planaria.
So the animal torture.
In the aquarium again to see if the planaria still remembered how to navigate the maze and find food, and lo and behold, the planaria remembered. So that's, of course, in science we need experiments to be reproduced and results confirmed, but what that experiment shows is that whatever memories are, they are not encoded in the nervous system. That's not how memories work. They're not little files inside the thumb drive in here. Yeah. That's not what it is.
Yeah, and the same goes for sort of the when planaria with two heads that he grew. If you cut off the head again, the next generation will also grow a second head.
Is this kind of this approach? I'm not, I haven't seen, I don't care about this, to be honest, right? But, it's like, can we find anything that could be a scientific criticism as about how things are, this mainstream understanding and physicalism and all that, right? Can we find something where we can challenge the status quo, right? This is apparently one of the places where it could be, right? So they're lashing onto it, right? I had a point, I forgot. I lost my train of thought. Let's keep going.
Whereas the alteration is not in the DNA, so...
Yeah, you can alter the electrochemical environment around the living being, and their morphological organizing principles will express themselves differently. which is mind-boggling because we like to boil everything down to DNA. But our understanding of DNA is that of a protein factory.
Yeah.
It's basically a brick factory. It's a factory that produces all the bricks you need.
Yeah.
And what we like to think, or have liked to think so far, is that if you have a brick factory, you explain Cologne's cathedral. Well, no, you have the bricks, but something has to know how to put those bricks together in the right way, so you get Cologne's cathedral. And what Michael is doing is providing us an account with a lot of experimental evidence to back it up. Not strong experimental evidence only, but flabbergasting experimental evidence that takes you aback to show that what's going on here is more than just DNA. How does the cell on the tip of your thumb know to be an epithelial cell, and the cell inside your head knows to be a neuron? Because they all come from stem cells.
Yeah.
They all came from one zygote, one fertilized egg, right? So how do they know what to do and how to behave and what to look like depending on where they are?
But isn't this that fabled external world that you don't have access to? What you're looking at is some patterns on that dashboard of yours. Right? Maybe the theories, the current theories about how that works needs to be adjusted. But so what? They need to be adjusted. The dashboard, right? This is a scientific approach. Whatever goes on the dashboard, there are scientific theories, scientific stories about. And if there's some evidence that sort of contradicts that or sort of puts a question to something, I didn't expect it to go there, or this lost a head, instead it can find food, and whatever, that's something problem. Then you create a better story or a better theory, right? Has no bearing on that external world of yours. Has no bearing on your mind at large. It's just this, we are in this woo-woo grey area territory where we sort of on a knife say, oh, no, I'm sort of on that other side. Oh, no, I'm inside at the dashboard. Oh, outside. Sort of, it's like... I don't feel confident that this guy actually understands that he has to stay on one side. It's like he has convinced himself, because he's so damn smart or whatever, right? For whatever reason, doesn't really matter, that he can sort of mind force himself to an understanding of what is outside. And also this IIT, that this Koch guy, right? That you can sort of experience the world and get to a theory about consciousness. You are still looking at your dashboard. It could be you look at something that very few people have looked at, or they haven't looked at it in that way, or using that instrument, or whatever, so it looks new, but it's still the dashboard. Doesn't matter what instrument you use, doesn't matter what sound, color, or taste. If you are used to use taste, and now you use color, doesn't matter. It's still on the dashboard. So, it's this fetish that I'm constantly, this is the only sort of reason I'm still latching a bit onto Kastrup, is because he wants so badly to find some proof for that external world, so he can say, aha, there it is, right? Look, we have found it. I want the Nobel Prize. I found the noumena. Here it is, right? It can't be done. It can't be done. Otherwise, either it's a part of your dashboard or it's an imagination, right? Depending on what you mean by, if you put imagination on the dashboard, well then that's also on the dashboard. Depends on how you ontologize your experience, your phenomena. And I'm not quite sure how he does it. It seems also to be quite fluffy and sort of grab words here and there, and it's incoherent to me, right? I like strict approaches to philosophy. Otherwise, I get skeptical, very skeptical. I'm always skeptical, but I'm seriously skeptical when people start to be some, words here and a word there, and I think it could be this, and it might be that, and this kind of thing.
That's morphogenesis. How does this form emerge? And what it seems to suggest is that there are macro level immanent organizing principles in nature that define morphogenesis. There may be archetypal
There is in nature. Where are we now? Are we outside your dashboard now? What is nature, right? The world and the universe and mind at large, all these terms you're using, you're jumping between these terms. It's like it's one big shell game. Maybe that's the whole shebang of this, right? That's the shtick, which is, let me confuse people and sort of halfway gaslight them with my titles and all the professors I've been talking to and all the 10 books I've been writing on my metaphysics. So people have to, throw in the towel. I say, I guess he's so smart that I can't figure it out, right? I'm not buying that. If it's not clear to me, I'm not buying it. That's it. I don't give a shit, right? I do give a shit, but I don't care about the philosophy, right? I'm not adapting anything. I'm not getting inspired, right?
templates in nature, if you want to call it that way, that inform the form of life. In other words, that inform life. Fred Matter uses this way of using words, and he's great for this.
Oh yes!
Yeah.
Oh, Emperor Palpatine, he's just so great. Oh my! This guy, Master or Matza, he must be a special kind of person. He's sort of divinity. He's the Gabriel of. I mean, he's so brilliant. He's so rich, and he has done some thinking, and he was sitting in his kitchen one day and had an epiphany, and therefore he's so smart. I mean, he's brilliant, of course, right? I have daddy issues, right? Not me, but this dude, right?
It matter. It says, how do you inform life? How do you bring form into life?
Yeah.
So there may be this fundamental.
So he asked a question. So he must be brilliant. He asked the question, how do you bring form into life? Well, how do you define life? Right? It must be something you can experience. Otherwise, I don't buy it. Then it would be a theory of life, at most. Using some kind of aspect of your dashboard to say, this is life. He has said that life is metabolism. You can't experience metabolism. That's also a theory in that sense, or a model, maybe you can say, right? You don't experience metabolism, just like you don't experience gravity. So you can't look and see, oh, look over there, metabolism. You can't do that, right? Or smell it, or taste it, or anything like that. It's a scientific model that sort of puts together what's going on and calls it metabolism. And therefore he thinks he is experiencing metabolism, and then he can say, aha, that's life. It's stupid. It's quite stupid, actually.
Organizing templates that are immanent in nature, immanent in life, that express themselves in the form of these fields that tell life how to structure itself.
It's crazy. This is like blue.
That tells life to structure itself? But where did he cock up these stories? Right? Or it's like he's been out there and watched what's going on. Now we're on the outside, right? Jumping from science and dashboard, and all of a sudden we're talking about how things work in the big picture out there, right? It's quite extraordinary that he thinks that he can do this, right? And for somebody who understands the limitations of if my hat could, there's something weird with it. Understands the problems of materialism, that you can't get outside your dashboard, which he has also said repeatedly, I believe, right? But then he sort of jumps out of it and talks to everybody about there's going this on and there's these fields and whatever. It's extraordinary, right?
Prince, and of course people, and Levin himself also talks about a sort of a platonic realm of form, right? That's what it's sort of hinting at.
Yeah, that's philosophy, and he's doing science. But of course, as an intelligent, critical thinking human being, once he's confronted with the evidence his lab is producing, of course, he's trying to understand it metaphysically as well, right? So his scientific work is not metaphysically biased in any way, But Michael, as an intelligent human being trying to make sense,
Yes, because he's in the group now, and therefore he is so brilliant, right? I mean, all the people surrounding me, they're just, I mean, and those who are outside, they're kind of stupid monkeys, right?
of life, the universe, and everything. Of course, he's forced to go into those, Platonic directions to make sense of what he's seeing in front of him. Planaria with two heads and the same DNA. What the hell's going on?
And the power of Levin is that you shouldn't talk about philosophy in a sense, because it's just the sheer experimental work he's doing is so mesmerizing already. He talks about something I think also value, and he brings it up in the interview I did with him, sort of that he doesn't believe in sort of these categories, right? He really sees intelligence, and he speaks more often about intelligence than consciousness. Also, I'd like to see how you read his work in that regard, the difference between intelligence and consciousness, but he sees it as a scale, right? So, and he's interested in how it scales up, because we all originate from one cell, and we're sitting here right now, and how did that scale up, that intelligence, and how did those cells, and he calls it a mind melt, so this sort of association, right, to a bigger organism.
Yeah. Mike and me, we do have a difference, slight difference in emphasis. My impression, and Michael, if you're watching this, forgive me if I'm misrepresenting you, but my impression is that he tends to think more bottom up. How do cells as elementary building blocks come together and subsume themselves into a greater organism like a human being or a frog or even a planarium. I tend to have a more top-down view of life. I don't see life as an...
Yes, top-down, right? There it is, the eye, right? He is on the top. Now listen carefully, listen fucking carefully, right? He has a top-down view of things, right? He sort of mindeth everything. You cannot invent new shit, because I've decided everything is mind. Therefore, no place for any other philosophy, right? And because I say it's mind, I must, and I have mind, therefore I can talk about all mind, right? I mean, do I need to say any more, man, right?
An aggregate of cells. I see life, all life, as the original zygote, the original fertilized egg that all life always was. And I see that zygote just creating internal structure in a fractal way. That zygote is a cell, knows how to be a cell, so it creates internal structure by applying that cell template to itself until it grows into a multicellular organism.
Okay, what is grow? Is that sucking some consciousness out of the outside of that dissociation? Is it semi-permeable? Then I need that mind over there and that mind over there to create a new mitochondria. What the fuck is going on, right? RNA and DNA and mRNA and all whatever, right? I was never good at biochemistry, though I worked in biochemistry for many years, but not exactly cell biology, right? But it's like it's this. He can just take whatever he wants and discard something else, it seems, and as he pleases, because all is mind. So he can just sort of pick and choose, it seems, right? It doesn't seem coherent. It doesn't seem that there's some foundational thing that is a small part, a small sort of starting point that sort of gets to the next point, and then the next point, and then this, and then this, and then you have science maybe, or then you have knowledge, and then you have science, then you have, whatever, one thing takes the other. It's sort of one big gumbo of all sorts of shit that he's just cherry picking when he needs it, and talks about cathedrals, and it's this sophist, word salad that is deeply frustrating, because he's not a stupid guy, obviously, right? But he's he's been poisoned with all sorts of weird things that sort of makes him unable to be this rigid, because there's some dogma here and there that needs to be implanted into the philosophy, so he can't go all in on rigidity. That's how I think I would explain it, right? He has to have room for science. He has to have room for, woo-woo shit, religion apparently, right? So these things have to fit into this big picture. So it's sort of a tapestry of whatever dogmas, and then filled in with some allusion to cherry-pick philosophies of Jung and Schopenhauer and Spinoza and whatever, and then there it is, right? It isn't rigid.
But I tend to see growth as a form of creating internal structure in an entity that is holistic from the beginning and never ceases to be holistic, and therefore every life is a holistic system. Michael, because of his life, the way he's experimenting with things, he takes the other perspective, which is also valid. It's a matter of how far each perspective can bring you, which is how cells come together to cohere together and form a complex multicellular organism. I justify my view by saying that no organism has ever been created by pasting cells together. Every organism on the planet has always grown from a cell. But of course, he has created these artificial organisms in which he has taken multiple cells together and just pasted them together, and lo and behold, they behave like an organism.
Yeah, that's the Xenobots. The Xenobots, they're taking stem cells from a frog.
Yeah.
That he just first sought to come to a shape. He used AI there, right, to find the right shape of a sort of cellular automata, you could say, and then he used sort of these bioelectric fields to instruct it, right? Or
to do a certain task, like moving in a circle, and lo and behold, they do that.
Yeah, and we've talked more often about sort of the origin of life and that we're far from it, but this gets like pretty close in the sense that he still needs a stem cell, but from there on, he's now able to create an organism.
A xenobot.
And again, it's still small, but I mean, where is this heading? And
he knows how to mobilize this immanent organizing templates in nature to give a coherent form even to an aggregate of cells, as if it were really a holistic living being that came from a zygote. It didn't. It's an aggregate of cells, but he can hack into these fields, these organizing principles, to bring behavioral coherence to what otherwise is an aggregate of cells. So he's tapping into something fundamental and immanent in nature, which can be characterized as a realm of archetypes, the basic copying mechanism. But it's not enough. It is the holistic organizing
code.
We all get it.
I'm jumping a bit
the
here.
dirigent, how do I say this?
Yeah, the director, or no, what's it called in English? Yeah,
the conductor. The conductor. And even if you are a defective music player, you still follow the maestro. You'll not be able to play well, but you're not going to take over the symphony. You're not going to disrupt the whole thing. But when something at a holistic level, when those organizing principles themselves are in some way disrupted or weak or whatever, then you get the actual expression. And here I can say this with confidence because I discussed this with Michael before more than once. We think of this break in the coherence of the field as a form of dissociation. It's when cancer cells...
Of course you do. What else could it be than a dissociation? I see it as he just chooses to, right? I mean, it's this disconnected metaphysics that can be used for anything. Unless it's sort of self-contradictory, right? So if it goes in a way that, doesn't fit, then it's a dissociation, right? I mean, it's just too easy, man, right? This is not a coherent, serious philosophy.
longer are looking at the conductor.
Yeah.
They start doing their own thing.
Yeah. Play their own
Yeah.
tune. Yeah.
And then you have real cancer, because they are
That would be jazz music, right? And music for the independent person.
dissociated
Yeah.
from the rest of the body plan. So mentally, if you think,
Dissonant in an orchestra. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
playing dissonant.
yeah, and then they disrupt the whole orchestra.
Yeah.
So in the hypothesis that the body is what mental states look like, cancer is an internal dissociation.
Mm.
It's when part of your mental inner life becomes dissociated from the rest of it. And when you get the dissociation, you get the false sense of individual identity. Like people with dissociative identity disorder, they have these multiple personalities. One of them claims, I am a 5-year-old child and I'm female, and the other claims that he is a 60-year-old male. And they all think they're right. And they all do their own thing. They don't obey the host personality's goals and plans anymore. They go off on their own tangents because they are dissociated. They can't reach each other in their lives anymore. They are separate.
But not, come on, dissociated. I mean, hang on. Hold on. Wait a minute. Each cell, is that a dissociation? Because you can have a cell that is, its own, right? Maybe brain. I mean, how? It's just, it's like, fuck off with your philosophy, right? Basically, he can just add whatever story that fits. This is an dissociation. Then these are dissociations because I say so, right?
Great. So they go off on a tangent, thinking that they are the entity. When cancer is
These are little stupid monkey cells who are not obeying or paying attention to the conductor, right? The conductor of Essentia. The CEO.
is when a dissociation happens. That's my hypothesis. Michael is not, he will not positively state this as fact, but he's open to this hypothesis.
Well, he did say that he did say to me, I think, that cells sort of forget themselves and identify with
Correct.
these higher goals.
It's a cognitive dissonance.
He will sort of use language like that, but basically he is saying the same thing, that
Yeah.
those cancer cells forgot sort of the organism. They
Yeah.
they think of themselves as a single cell again, and
Exactly.
then your next cell is an enemy.
Yes, we can't have any individualism here. No. You have to obey, right? There's one eye. There's one mind, right? There's one essential foundation to rule them all. We can't have these individualists. No.
Now.
Yeah. Well, an enemy, but
yeah.
at least you don't care about it.
Outside,
You go off and-
it's you're outside.
Yeah.
It's not sort of
Yeah, so you grow as a tumor because you want to extend your empire.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not
Yeah.
part of a bigger entity. Now
Yeah.
you're your own thing. So you do your own thing. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what cancer does. Yeah, Michael uses the language of cognitive glue. So he speaks of this field as the cognitive glue. It's a very idealist.
So she just invents, I think you could call it some cognitive glue, right? So they just come up with something. Okay, I guess you could say a scientist who observes reality and some empirical evidence and some cognitions of these slimy things, right? Come up with a theory called cognitive glue to account for this particular event. Fine. But then he takes it, I can use that. That sounds idealist, right? I can use it for my philosophy. I am the big guy. I am the philosophy guy. I am, on top of things here, right? I'm sitting in the shine from my coat of arms, right? And I'm the right hand of First Master who has access to the mind God, right? Am I overdoing it? Maybe a little. But it has these connotations constantly.
This terminology. So it's the cognitive glue that allows the cells to sort of cognitively understand each other and cooperate cognitively.
Each cell has a cognition? How does he get to this? What is it? What is it cognizing, and how does it do this? How did you get to that understanding? Doesn't it sound like it's just making shit up as it goes along? I mean, somebody. I mean, how does it do this? Yeah.
And when there is a cognitive dissociation, when they cannot cognitively bridge that gap between themselves, then on the one side of dissociation, they go off on their own. They do their own thing. And that's exactly what cancer tumors are. They create their own vascular system. They use as much energy as they can get from the body.
But the way they go on, they are cancerous. They're going on. They're not listening to their master. They're becoming independent. They are probably becoming Trump supporters, right? I mean, the language. I mean, it's the same kind of approach. Excuse me for saying this, but it's the same kind of approach to language as Adolf Hitler used with the Jews that were vermin and things like that. Maybe not as strongly, but he is sort of what's it called when you Disneyfy animals? What's it called when you sort of make persons out of give them personality, just out of sort of fairy tale story, right? This is sort of I forget the term, right? But
they don't obey the body plan. They create their own structures.
Obey what? Obey what? Obey? Obey? Isn't this sort of a Freudian slip of some kind where it's like obeying your master? I mean, I have lifted the lid on this guy being some kind of... When you have been in the Large Hadron Collider and CERN and that is the temple of Illuminati, right? I mean, this it has the notion of conspiracy and all that, right? The New World Order and all. But could he be some kind of little dude that has been pushed to they wiggle and then he has to go and say shit to convince a lot of people that they should own nothing and be happy, right? They should conform to the system, right? Don't be your own cell. You will be considered a cancer, right? Yes. Better safe than sorry, right? I might be, taking a bit too far, but I would rather be in front of things than behind things, right?
So it takes more than a problem in the brick factory.
Because everything is mind. And he says that mind over there is cancer. Well, it doesn't take much of an imagination to start to say that dissociation over there is also cancer. Like that individualist over there who doesn't want to pay his fucking taxes, right? It doesn't take much imagination. It's just next door, right?
You need a cognitive dissociation at the level of the entire bioplan, so to say.
And I, of course, directly had sort of these exotic ideas of where that bioelectric field is then, where those forms are stored. And Michael Levin sort of brought me a bit down to earth. There is a lot to be said already in molecular biology on sort of the bioelectricity that we know, right? To what degree can sort of just the physics and the biology we know, molecular biology, can account for this? And where do you think it really points to something beyond that we really don't yet understand?
I don't think we will be able to ultimately account for everything in terms of measurable physical properties, because I don't think the dashboard is complete. I don't think physicality tells us everything about all the causal organizing principles.
No, it's not complete. And you also said it's a representation. But yet, still, you want to jump out and tell me about how it works on the other side of this thing that is idealized, and optimized and representation. Then, but you want to go and tell me about that world outside that you can't argue for, right? And it's made of what you want it to be made up of, right? And you can say, this is a bad one, this is a good one, this is, cancer, and this... fuck off, man, right? I'll take this little chapter here, finish that, because the next one is how Levin's ideas inform Kastrup's thinking. Oh my god, it fell into the turban, right? Let's get this one over so I can start with the next one in the next video.
Suppose of the noumenal world, the world as it is in itself. It's an incomplete appearance, an incomplete image. So I don't think we can close that causally at the level of non-physical stuff. But we can clearly go a long way in that direction. And we may even be able to establish empirically that certain things work, even if we don't understand exactly how they work. That has been the history of science, by the way, and the history of technology at least. Technologists don't care about truth. What they care is about...
Oh, but you do, right? You haven't defined what you mean by truth. You haven't done any fucking epistemology to the best of my knowledge, and I've been following you for 5 or 6 years now, right? You haven't done any fucking bleeding epistemology and any definition of knowledge. So don't tell me about truth, right? I mean, no, they care about what works because that's what's fucking interesting. How do I use my dashboard the smartest way, right? You might also want to consider some philosophy about there are some crazy people out there, right? How do I address those? There are some people over there who wants my shit. And if they don't get it, they want to kill me. How do I address that shit? Right? But I don't care about some fancy ideas of what goes on in an area I don't have access to, and I don't even can get to whether or not it is there or not. Right? And he wants to connect his dashboard that is limited in all these sorts of ways, and then sort of use that as a stepping stone to get out there? Give me a fucking break, man.
About what works, right? So I think...
And he calls that truth, or he implies it, right? That's truth, and I have it because I am the hard-on collider, Kastrup, right?
We are not far... Okay, I'll make a big statement now.
Oh my god.
I think we are not far from figuring out how to cure all forms of cancer.
Who are those we? Who are those we? Am I in that? And am I working on... No, it's not me, apparently, right? Because I didn't know I was a part of this. So it can't be me. So who are these we? And how do they get the resources to do this? Oh, government, right? Pay your fucking taxes, little slave. Stupid monkey. Do as you're told. Don't be a cancer.
Not cure. Let me rephrase it. We are not far from turning every form of cancer into a chronic illness. An illness you have for the rest of your life but will not kill you. Like allergies.
Okay, so you can put a lid on it. So it doesn't work, right? You can inhibit it. You can't remove it, but you can say, don't spread. Okay, fair enough. Good deal. I would like that. But so what? I mean, that would be fantastic. But it doesn't change your fucking philosophy, does it? Right? You're still talking about the dashboard, right? Cells, cancer cells, or whatever kind of cells you're referring to, all this shit goes on your dashboard. It's scientific. It's not philosophical.
Darn, you have it. Okay, you do certain things every now and then, like that frog that Michael gave cancer to, forced the bioelectric fields to maintain their...
Oh, animal torture. So he gives cancer to a frog? How nice. What a nice guy, right? But you have to do it because academia. Right, okay. I think it's enough for this. Please give me a comment. Share, like, subscribe, and all that, right? Hope you enjoyed. Let's check it out, the next part, in a recent coming video. So bye bye, see you in the next one.